Fans, we are live with another edition of the Hannibal TV this week on YouTube. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. We got a lot to talk about this week. It's been a busy and momentous week to say the least. But before we get into it, I have to, of course, introduce the one and only godfather of this channel, the Hannibal TV, Hannibal. Hannibal, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm just getting in from the gym and getting a little snack. I'm going to be going to watch the Mildred Burke movie tonight, which I didn't even hear about until the King of Connecticut told me yesterday and sent in that review saying it was the best movie he ever saw, which is saying something. Not just best wrestling movie, but the best movie he's seen in his life. So, I
Wow,
mean, I
that's
wasn't
high
even
praise.
aware of it. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Very, very high praise. I've heard the reviews are very positive as well, and probably uh, will outshine the Iron Claw. As I mentioned to you before we went on air, I caught the full amount of your Lance Von Erich interview where he talked about the Iron Claw. And fans, if you haven't seen that interview, go ahead and do yourself a favor and search it up. Seems like a really, really great guy, and there is, as you pointed out, ample room in the Von Erich slash Lance Von Erich story for a Netflix miniseries.
Yeah, to really capture it all because they cut out Chris. I mean, they cut out one of the brothers completely from the movie. They cut out Lance, even though they had MJF playing him. There was so much more to the story. I know you didn't mind the movie. I really didn't like it. Mostly casting issues and just some of the things that weren't realistic enough for me that just took me right out of it. But Lance is one of the nicest wrestlers I've ever met. I've done 2 interviews with him now. He lives in Mexico now, and he also lives in South Africa. And most of it, actually, pretty much all of his other interviews are terrible quality because of the Wi-Fi connections out there. So I went down to Vegas to interview him in January, and I helped him get some NAD, which is like a rejuvenation IV from Jenny Santana's clinic down there, Infinite Wellness, which, by the way, they do have a deal WrestleMania weekend. I think it's like $500 off for anyone that wants to look up Infinite Wellness Las Vegas or look up Jenny Santana on Instagram. Ask her about it. You can probably meet her and either get $500 off stem cells or another type of infusion. But just a great guy, and he's back in South Africa now, so I wanted to do one more interview with him before he returns. So I did another interview with him, Fan Interactive, this week. He's had a very interesting life. It's funny because some people have said, well, why is he still using the Von Erich name? That's not his real last name. It's not the real Von Erich's last name either, guys. Their last name is Atkinson, and he's moved on. He has a whole other life. First of all, his actual last name is Vaughn. His actual last name is closer to Von Erich than the Atkinson's name are. But what are we supposed to say? I don't even really remember his real name. So what am I just supposed to say? Like put up the interview under his real name? We don't do that. But he's a great guy, really cool guy. You could say, I mean, Kevin is still alive. He's not that old, but he looks like 15, 20 years older than he is. Lance is still in really good shape, looks good. He's still killing it with the ladies. I mean, you could say, although I think Kevin got the inheritance of whatever all the inheritances are, but supposedly when Lance sold his gym chain that he had in South Africa, which by the way, he was also a movie star there. Who the hell did he? Mark Cuban, I think, for some reason ended up buying the gym chain there. They basically said, "I'm opening up a chain of gyms here. You can either sell out, or I'm going to put you out of business." And he's like, "Well, it's Mark Cuban. I'm going to sell out." So He's
Yeah,
lived quite a life.
I think it was Richard Branson
Yeah,
from
Richard Branson. Yeah.
Virgin. Yeah. Is there you sat down with him in person, you spent, some time with him. Is there, would you still say heat between him and Kevin, or is that kind of like bygones? Because it seemed to me that he didn't really have a high opinion of Kevin, but loved Kerry.
It seems like with both Kevin and Lance, and this is typical of wrestling, because Lance sometimes does autograph sessions and Kevin does them now too. Although now that he's under AEW, the Von Erichs are one of these groups that are in AEW Vortex. They're hardly ever used for whatever reason, but they're all signed, including Kevin, from my understanding. So I don't know how many outside of autograph sessions Kevin's going to do now that he's getting that Tony Khan money. But I think it's a thing where they say they've made up, and if they see each other in person, they're going to shake hands. But clearly, when they do separate interviews, you can tell there's still hard feelings between the two, in my opinion. But everyone acts, and this is interesting talking to him, like it was Lance's idea. He wasn't even a wrestler. They came up to him at a golf course, and I mean, I would have hired him too. He looks great. Convinced him to be a wrestler, sent him to Portland to get some experience, then brought him back. And their biggest mistake, which I agree with Lance, since this was the pre-internet era, was exposing him after that he wasn't a real Von Erich when nobody really knew. And it just made them look like liars in the end by making a big deal. Oh, he wasn't. We've told you guys now for years he was a Von Erich, but now we're going to tell you he wasn't a real Von Erich. And another point he brought up in that, for the people that were like, oh, well, he wasn't a real brother or a real family member, and the fans were starting to hold that against him. Well, there's been tons of that in real life, like Jimmy Jack Funk, for instance, with the Funks. Did anyone really hold that against Jimmy Jack? The real reason was he was doing a lot of work, double shots, because a lot of people don't like to admit this, but Kevin had his issues too. And this is
Big
actually
time.
documented. Jerry Jarrett said it in the interview. He may have recovered, and I've had issues myself. So I thank God that Kevin got over it. I'm not holding it against him. But like, the fact of the matter is, people were no-showing due to drug issues and just with being flaky, not motivated to show up at towns. Lance was doing all the work and not being paid for all the work that he was doing. So that was one of the main issues there. They didn't want to pay him for the amount of work he was doing. He was saying he was making more for autograph sessions, private autograph sessions, than he was to actually wrestle. So, I mean, the Von Erich territory has never really been known for taking great care of people that weren't their own either.
Yeah, I enjoyed the insights before we leave Lance that he had on Portland too. Very very interesting comments about him in the Good Time van, and some of the characters that he encountered in Portland, including Matt Bourne. I thought the one discussion about the unfortunate, I guess, misunderstanding that they had that led to a brawl was an interesting story, but then they made it up and were good friends again, just like men used to do.
Yeah, and he did have a skirmish with Billy Jack Haynes too, which he talked about. But he does talk. He has a big smile on his face when he's talking about that Good Times van, and it just, wrestling is such a different business anymore these days, because there's just not that groupie side to it, for better or worse, and they're not even really on the road anymore. But there was a real camaraderie of the road, and it was the business was a big adventure, where now it's just a show, and the characters aren't as wild and crazy, and that's reflected on the show. And there's another big topic this week. I know you really like the Cena heel turn. The one thing I'll say about the quote unquote heel turn, is nobody booed him, and everyone's just talking about how cool it was. It's not like he's getting booed for beating up Cody. The liked it. It's like no one's throwing garbage in the ring or anything. And so I'm just
Yes.
saying this because it's like it's not the Hogan era where everyone was mad throwing stuff in the ring. There's no one's trying to set John Cena's car on fire. They're just happy because they're sick of him playing the baby face. But The Rock is the coolest guy that they have. And then they're with this rapper, which I don't listen to rap. I think rap is crap, to quote
Yeah.
Kurt Hennig.
Yeah.
But he's really cool for the
No.
younger generation. Well, to the
No.
younger generation, he's cool. So
No. I
don't
think.
say what you're saying.
Well, I think you need to take a close look at Triple H and his use of influencers and quote unquote rap stars. I may be an anomaly. I heard of this guy Travis Scott, but only because somebody got killed at a concert that he did a couple of years ago. But I'm glad you brought that up because in addition to a couple of other facets of the Cena heel turn, I wanted to get your thoughts on the way that it looked like this idiot punched Cody Rhodes in the eardrum. And we saw on SmackDown, he came out with a pretty nasty looking black eye and allegedly backstage underplayed the level of damage that this Travis Scott did. But could you foresee that happening in the past and not having the guy get up and beat the living crap out of Travis Scott when the cameras went off? What are your thoughts on that whole deal?
Well, it's The Rock's friend, so it's very political. And like Cody, if he would have said anything about that, it would have got him in trouble. But it's interesting because I was thinking actually today, back when that time in Bill Watts' territory, supposedly Jake no sold a punch to Muhammad Ali because it was like they didn't like celebrities coming in. But now it's like there's not really any news. The last news star, who was it? Cena or Roman Reigns from
Roman Reigns, yeah.
Roman Reigns, I guess, is the last one, but he hasn't reached the level of Cena mainstream. But it's like they're fighting the problem of not creating new stars with bringing in celebrities
Right.
like Logan Paul, this rapper. So it's like the only problem with it is they're not that well trained, as you pointed out there, even though Logan Paul's been putting on some good matches, and it makes it look like anyone can do it. And it just they're getting so much money, and it's like they haven't paid their dues or anything. So it just they don't have the same like passion for it as like a Piper or Hogan or someone that has paid their dues, or even Austin. He paid his dues before he got his spot. So I don't know. I know why they're doing it, and it's smart because you gotta find some way to make people interested if you don't have stars. But
Well,
I don't know anything about him. This was literally the first time I'd ever heard of him.
Well, as Lewis here pointed out, 10 people died at one of Travis's festivals due to poor management of his festival. Is this the guy WWE wants to be seen doing business with? Good question. I would also add that I know you probably caught highlights of the Royal Rumble. They had another one of these individuals in the Royal Rumble match. And if you saw the spear, I forget his name, is something Speed. Sorry, I'm not up on my TikTok influencers.
I will be fully honest with you. After seeing Jey Uso won, I didn't even watch one highlight of the Royal Rumble. I was that normally I watched the Cena segment on YouTube after from Elimination Chamber. That's all I watched from Elimination Chamber. I've just had absolutely zero interest in watching, but please tell us what happened.
Well, I believe I can't remember the name of the talent. I'm sure the fans will point it out, but he was jumped, couldn't make it to the ring, and then there's a segment backstage where Triple H is saying, "Hey, you," or something to that effect. Something Speed, whatever. Get in the match. You're in the match, and he runs down in the match, and Braun Breaker speared him out of his shoes. And the first thing that I thought when he took the bump was he didn't tuck his chin at all. Looked like he legit broke his neck. So I thought that was very offensive as well, letting a guy who's clearly untrained into such a, whether it draws eyeballs to the product or not, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And then I hear Travis Scott, who's about 140 pounds, soaking wet and wearing boots, to quote Ice Cube, is training to be in the ring as well. It isn't for me, and I think it hurts the business ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to continue, so I can't get mad at it. It's just I cannot watch it. That's how I can vote. But as far the thing that I didn't like about Travis Scott, because as I said, I don't know about him and I don't care to know anything about him. So I'm not going to do that research that you did, but you follow the news more than me, was he added nothing to that to me. I mean, that was my complaint about that segment. First of all, that it's just a segment. At least when Hogan come in, it's like it was part of a match. It's like, now we're going to do this segment where John Cena turns heel. Whatever, it got over. But to me, it's like, why is this guy part of this? I don't know who he is. I know the rap fans do, but to me, it's like, I don't know who this guy is. Get him the hell out of there.
Well, I think it not only didn't add anything, it distracted from the match, especially when he was coming out there. And I know WWE is, they're catering to a perhaps a little bit of a more mature audience, allegedly on Netflix and everything. But he comes out and he's either smoking something or vaping. And when he was sitting there in the ring, standing around, really doing nothing until that horrendous punch or to the eardrum, he was vaping or something. I just thought it was completely detracting from the angle. And yes, I do concur with you 100%. Those fans that are, perhaps younger, that are calling it the greatest heel turn in history, no, I could think of probably 5 or so off the top of my head. And we're going to be covering that on Shooting from the Hip next weekend, the most memorable heel turns. But I think it got a lot of press because Cena was a babyface for the last 20 years.
Yeah, and The Rock is possibly the most famous person in the world. So anything he's going to do is going to get press. And again, it was acted well, but as far as actually making people hate him, I think this actually makes Cena cooler than if he had stayed with Cody Rhodes, because Cody Rhodes, again, no cool person is going to like Cody Rhodes because he's so corporate. And just to show how corporate he is that he didn't complain about the Travis Scott thing. Oh, thank you, sir. Blah, 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 blah. He didn't try to stick up for himself or anything like that. But honestly, the thing that got the most heat that night, if you want to talk about heel heat, was the playing of the American national anthem. That is heat. The Cena thing, oh, this is cool. We were witness to something. He's a babyface so long. He switched, but nobody's like, oh, I hate him. Now I'm going to go beat him up. Let's all wait after the show and try and push the car over like they did to Larry Zbyszko, who after he beat down Bruno, which, by the way, I might ask Larry about this because I'm supposed to be interviewing him at some point next week, the Z-Man.
Yeah, Shea Stadium, 1980, one of the most shocking heel turns in history, and apparently even the wrestlers backstage were very, very shocked at that. So there's a lot, but just before we leave this particular issue, wanted to also get your thoughts on the fact that they on Raw didn't follow it up with either Cena or The Rock or all of them being there. I know Vince Russo this week talked about that extensively on his podcast, and I do respect his opinion. He said it was like Bash at the Beach when Hogan turned, the next Nitro not having any of the main players there. And I know there was, a movie being shot or whatnot, but a lot of people thought that detracted from advancing the storyline, and The Rock completely breaking kayfabe at the conference.
And it was also the lowest viewed Raw on Netflix. So it's like they didn't carry that over. And yes, that's the other thing about it that why I do not like wrestling today, and I don't think I'll ever. It's fun to do. These people are lucky; they have one of the funnest jobs in the world. But like on the WWE's YouTube channel, they show the heel turn. On the same YouTube channel, within like half an hour, there's The Rock breaking kayfabe talking about the heel turn. So how can you? You don't even watch. Like I'm gonna watch this Mildred Burke movie tonight. Whoever's the heel in the same theater isn't going to pop on the screen after and like say, yes, this was a movie. We're all working together, blah, blah, blah. You could at least, even in movies, you don't have the antagonist and protagonist on like Jimmy Kimmel before because it likes to like at least wait till the whole feud is over a year from now and then break kayfabe on it. But that's one of the things that's like takes me out of it. And I think if people still had to pay for the pay-per-views, they wouldn't do that as much. But yeah, to me, it's like, how can you say he's a heel? Like as Alfred Cross says, well, he's a role model. He's still gonna be doing the Make-A-Wish stuff. He's still a role model. He's just playing a character like The Rock talked about within half an hour of it happening. It's just a show. But where it gets confusing is when it's on the same channel like seconds later. It's not like he's even talking about it on the Pat McAfee show the next day or something on a completely different YouTube channel. It's the same channel where they showed it happening right after. So to me that's what I don't like about it. I love The Rock. It when you see him come out, he's got the star. There's nobody that has that really to his level at all. It's cool to see that and to like feel the electricity and stuff when he comes out. That kind of brings you back to the old wrestling, but then you destroy the heat right after to me. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, 300%. I mean, everyone knows it's entertainment and it's predetermined, but when you stick it right in your face like that, it really takes a lot of people out of it.
The
Myself
thing
included.
about Russo that I will just say where like Lewis here saying they should have followed it up. I mean, they could have cut a promo in the back and aired it
Yes.
on Raw. But this is a big problem in wrestling today. Not just WWE, it's a huge problem in AEW. Vince Russo says he would have something for all the main people every week. So you forget about things or they lose momentum. Like MJF having 4 matches last year. He was more popular the year before. When you only see somebody 1 week and then you see him 2 months later, you forget about it and you lose interest in the angle. Like you got to keep people on. When was the last time the Young Bucks wrestled? I mean, they're gonna lose heat. Or for instance, Jade Cargill. Remember, she came in with all that buzz, huge buzz. They had her interacting with all the top female stars. Then they took her off. And then they bring her back months later, and she's never had any buzz. And then apparently, I read just before we did this, there was actually almost a fight between her and Shayna Baszler backstage recently, and she's called some of the women locker room people wolves, quote unquote, and Chelsea Green even responded by posting something on Twitter saying, "Oh, I'm a wolf," lying on her couch with her dogs, saying you should like insinuating you shouldn't call corporate people wolf. I would say that there's a lot of cattiness and backstage politicking in wrestling, and I'm sure she experienced that. But I'm also saying that again, that's a good example. You bring someone in, there was a lot of interest in her. Then she was off TV for months, and it's going to be very hard to make her a star because when she came in, she was right there with Charlotte, and now I don't think anyone views her as a potential top woman anytime soon. Anyways, she's one of the AEW people, and there's a lot of them like Andrade. He's been doing Actually, I think Meltzer mentioned it. One of the issues with Andrade in AEW is he didn't like jobbing, and that was causing him not to be used as much. In WWE, he just does it. and I guess he wanted to go back to be with Charlotte, but like he there's another example of somebody. It doesn't all end up like Pentagon in WWE, but we'll see what Pentagon's ultimate story is. But they did release his brother Ray Phoenix this week from AEW, and Meltzer mentioned with the release of Miro, Phoenix, Ricky Starks, and there was another one recently. It's millions and millions worth of saving because for some reason Miro alone had a contract of over $1 million and wasn't doing anything. So they're saving money, and I don't think any of those guys are really going to move the needle in WWE. So it was just kind of a waste of money in general to have them under contract.
Well, yeah, I think with Jade Cargill, she had one of the as I told you when I was watching Elimination Chamber, she had a pretty impressive sequence where she ran out and basically like a house of fire, to quote Gorilla Monsoon, kicked a lot of butt. I didn't hear about this Shayna Baszler thing. What was the nature of the conflict there?
Let me pull it up. But while you're at it, while I'm pulling that up, what's the Hall of Fame news for the week? And we'll circle back to Baszler.
Yeah, I think the Hall of Fame has got some big news this week with yesterday's announcement of Lex Luger. But before I go to that, I just want to say I agree with you about Phoenix and Penta ultimately not moving the needle. And I'll just slip in the fact that you are going to ground and end the career of Super Crazy, the ECW legend, another Mexican high flyer, Saturday, May 3rd in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance 1 and done. I think you're going to show the superiority of not only your style of wrestling, but a Canadian super athlete such as yourself. But did you want to comment on that?
Oh, I'm just saying I'm in great shape right now. As I said, I've been working out. I've been doing 2 a days since I've been here in Wichita, more than I have ever in my life. That's part of the reason why I came to Kansas to just focus on training and my health. And I'm sick of today's wrestling. I really hate it. So I'm gonna bring back my style for that match. And I don't know if I'll wrestle again this year or not. I definitely think there'll probably be some more, but I have something to prove in this match, and I'm definitely gonna do it. I wouldn't want to be super crazy, and you're going to be managing me for that. So that should be interesting. But let me get into this Shayna Baszler thing. It's been confirmed, according to Wrestling Observer, by at least half a dozen people that nobody went into great detail about it, but Jade Cargill rubbed enough people the wrong way in the Raw women's division that Baszler was like, I've had enough of this. I want to fight her, until management came in and calmed the situation down. And then I guess Baszler got injured. They didn't run into each other for a while again. But despite the tension created by the incident, this happened in June. It only is coming out now. Cargill and Bianca Belair still kept the titles, defending them successfully against Baszler and Zoe Sark, a king and queen of the ring. Then eventually lost the belts in Scotland, but regained them again at Bash in Berlin. I have not. There's too many titles for me to follow anything, but yeah, there's definitely backstage uh, heat in the women's locker room. I think in both companies, there's a lot of cattiness because Britt Baker, for instance, there's a lot of there's rumors about her and Christian, for instance, when she was still dating that. Is it Adam Cole that she was with?
The guy that looks like he's starving.
Yeah, and he's another guy in the million plus club. Is he worth it? Yet they let the Hardy. By the way, Dynamite got a 0.13 rating, with MJF supposedly making over $5 million a year, and this Swerve Strickland guy making somewhere around that too, which WWE even said, hey, you didn't have to pay him that much. We weren't that interested in him. But maybe I take Swerve a little more of an annoyance way because one of his agents is constantly bragging to me about how financially successful he is these days. So that's kind of annoying to hear. But yeah, they let the Hardys go. NXT got a 0.15 using the Hardys. AEW with all of their quote unquote stars, and they even brought in Mystico, the Mexico star. They have this roster of 200 people, yet they still bring in these other guys. And there goes Vince Russo again. Like, I'll just say to his point, you're not even using your own guys every TV show, but you're going to bring in other guys that aren't under contract. And guess what? They were in a 20,000 seat arena and had under 3,000 fans. So my point is, they let the Hardys go. They wasted the Hardys. And the Hardys helped NXT beat them quite distinctively again this week.
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing situation where it's pretty clear that the fortunes of AEW, no matter who they sign, they're not going to improve unless Tony Khan gets some help with the creative and the whole. By the sounds of it, they don't have production meetings. Hell, at Great North Wrestling, we have, not to pull the curtain back too much, but we definitely have an actual meeting before every show, and yet AEW doesn't do that.
I think the big problem with AEW, and Meltzer said it, is he was talking about this upcoming boxing league now, where the Saudi Arabia is pretty much funding Ari Emanuel, Dana White, Vince McMahon might be involved, but there's going to be both WWE and UFC people involved in this boxing league. And how is this going to affect those two companies with some of the main people now working on boxing? It's going to spread them thin a bit. But he went into it by saying, and I agree with him fully on this, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. One of Tony Khan's downfalls is he's works for his soccer team. He works for the football thing. He was at the combines recently. Plus, he's in charge of AEW. How are you going to do a good job at any of them? They're all huge jobs, but AEW alone, you have two. It used to be three. One of them got canceled. Now you got two, and one of them gets the same ratings as Wipeout that was canceled recently on the same station. However, WBD might have a bit more of a fondness for AEW because they're supposedly involved with them somehow. There's some sort of agreement, financial beneficial agreement, which hasn't been released publicly, but they might own part of it. But the thing is, it's just Tony Khan is spread too thin. He can't pay enough attention to the product to make it good. And they do have people could make it good with the roster they have. In theory, they have a great roster. And by the way, thank you for the $5 tip, the Ragu Overlord, on my Lake Monster video I did with Preston Dennett yesterday. Yes, and again, I like getting into stuff like that because I know this is still mainly a wrestling channel, almost as much of a UFO channel now, but the paranormal stuff I've always been interested in, and I appreciate that you enjoyed it, Ragu Overlord, and thanks for the tip.
And don't forget, we're also dipping our toes into the true crime genre. I'm very excited for a fourth interview with author, filmmaker, and renowned podcaster William Ramsey. He'll be on Monday to discuss serial killers and the rise of the MK Ultra program. But back to your comment there about Tony Khan. It's interesting because you did a quite an amazing interview with Nikita Koloff a few years ago, and he talked about why WCW ultimately failed. And I know there's some comparisons there between WCW and AEW. I don't see it personally, but he said that when it became part of the Turner empire, it was just a subsidiary as opposed to when he worked for Crockett. and wrestling was front and center, and that's all. There wasn't a pull focus away from all these other things, and I think Tony Khan and AEW are that Turner paradigm times 10.
I'm just pulling something up here because we did have a vote on this channel, by the way. I just want to put this out for fact. Over 1,000 people voted because Tony Khan often likes to brag that AEW is better than WCW. Over 1,000 people voted. 89% of you think WCW is better than AEW. So what does that say? And by the way, AEW has wasted far more money than WCW ever did. The big thing in WCW was, oh, you paid Lanny Poffo for 3 years to have 1 or 2 matches. Well, that was a part of a deal to keep Macho Man employed for one thing. And part of it, and Macho Man also brought sponsorship money from Slim Jim to WCW. And I mean, Lanny was actually good, but that's one guy. There was a few others you rarely use, but there's people in AEW like hardly ever wrestling. Actually, Meltzer said it today. Now that there's no house shows, both in AEW and WWE, your average wrestler, whether used regularly or not, wrestles between 10 to 30 times a year. That's your average wrestler, whether it's Gunther or Cena. Because Meltzer was saying, like, technically Cena in the past would be considered a part-time wrestler, but now they actually have physical matches so infrequently that even if he's only doing 30 some odd dates, he's going to be about appearing as much or more as some of these regular types like the Roman Reigns and all this. But yeah, overall there's less wrestling, but there's so many people in AEW getting paid to do nothing. I think the NWA Women's Champion, what's her name
Camille,
again? Yeah,
Camille,
she's in this movie about Mildred Burke, and
yes.
Meltzer pointed out she was signed last year, but she started wrestling, I guess, last summer, and between last summer and November, she had 6 matches, and she hasn't wrestled since, and she's still under contract. Paige has a huge contract there. Soraya, she hasn't wrestled since October.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, back in the day, wrestlers honed their craft by, wrestling, 300 dates a year. Really, it's a a profession that takes reps. A lot of people talk about the 5,000 hour rule or whatnot. So it really boggles the mind as to how the generations coming up are really going to get good. Which interestingly, I wanted to ask you this.
When was the last time they used Jim Ross, by the way? And I love Jim Ross, but
Yeah,
like he supposedly has the biggest wrestling announcer contract ever. They don't even use it.
that's sad because I like JR. But I wanted to ask you about the announcement that now WWE has created this. I don't know whether it's developmental, but that Evolve program is going to air on Tubi, and with the hopes that it says in the tagline that they get to NXT or maybe even the main roster. How green are these talents that they're going to feature on television? That they'll probably be having to learn where the hard cam is, and does that make any sense to you, given the saturation or oversaturation?
I think from what I understand, because NXT now also just think about this, by the way, NXT is getting way less than Dynamite and beating them every week. It's getting incomparably less to what WBD is paying AEW, and it's destroying AEW every week. But I think the issue is because NXT is doing better and they care more about the show now, and they're also featuring TNA stars on it, which, by the way, seems to be a division of their development. They want the greener NXT to be on Tubi, but they're also incorporating their WWE ID independent talent onto that show too. So, is it? It's just a way to get people experience, and and try and get a buzz about their WWE ID talent and get a payday from Tubi. I'm sure Tubi is paying them more than what they pay for their regular shows because it's WWE.
Yeah, I question I understand that for sure, and it comes down to money like everything else. But man, it's going to be. I'm actually going to check it out because I'd like to see who they're featuring there. Maybe there's just some men and women that fell through the cracks, but uh, the wisdom of having such green people on television. I mean,
Well,
that's
it's a fake crowd too, from what I understand. So the other thing is, if there's mistakes and it's not live, they can cut mistakes. But yeah, one of the issues is the independents are drying up, so they need to get people experience. So I understand why they're doing it, and I get your point too. But it's not something that I have on my watch list. And the other reason they're doing it is because even though it's on Tubi, which you can watch at any time, it's premiering at the same time as AEW. So it's just another shot to AEW, which I think they're going to be. It's going to be interesting in the years to come because with this new ID program, they're really locking up any talent that's half decent. Plus, they're signing all these top athletes, and because of the independents being fairly dead, there what we got GCW, NWA, a bunch of really small independent, but it's not like there's all these hot independent companies all over the world. There's that one in Seattle that works with AEW, Defy, which by the way, Ricky Starks, I guess, just vacated the title. He had won there due to their association with AEW. They didn't want to let him go back and drop the title. But it's going to be interesting because you won't see as many experienced breakout stars now, or as many people from the indies getting a buzz, just because there's so little interest overall in the indies. And the good ones are getting signed by WWE and put under the ID. So it's a good way of like blocking AEW from getting up and coming people that are going to be any good.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I know here in Ontario, the independent scene is, although there's a lot of companies out there that really oversaturate the market. They some of them, such as the local one around Kingston and area here, they produce these cards that are horrendous and really serve to kill a lot of the towns. And then you've got the small ones that are a niche market that operate out of a brewery, and it's going to be very interesting to see. I think AEW did a lot to kill the indies, and I can see this happening more.
And there's a lot of like cosplay indies. Some of them even call themselves cosplay, but there's a bunch that just is like people that don't even look like they train, dressed up in outfits most of the time, just doing goofy, stupid stuff. And one of my friends who's a lawyer that doesn't even watch wrestling sent me a video the other day of some of this cosplay type stuff. Is like, who watches this? And if I brought my kids to see this thinking it was wrestling and got this crap, I would never go to another wrestling thing again. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it'll get hits on Facebook or whatever out of the stupidity of it, but long term, it's just going to destroy the business. And Lewis confirming here, he hasn't heard from JR since December. Lewis, the LFG guys are all already under WWE contract, which to me takes me right out of it. Some of them, I'm sure, will be featured on this Tubi show, and some of them will be on NXT. But make no mistake about it, they're all already signed. And of course, Mike D, aka Grandma Daisy, aka Mike Gonzalez, Cato's biggest fan. By the way, Paul, not Paul Diamond, Pat Tanaka is doing an interview with Jack,
Yeah.
and he's doing it just for you, Mike.
Yes, coming in April. I believe, don't quote me on this. I think it's Sunday, April the 13th. I finally had some serious and extensive discussions with Pat Tanaka. And I got to say, what a nice guy, very humble. And I told him that people like Mike and others that watch the Hannibal TV are clamoring for the interview. I get DMs, I get direct messages saying, basically, when's Pat Tanaka going to do an interview? Especially after I interviewed Paul Diamond last year, and he's blown away and very, very happy. He's got a book coming out that he's going to give us some exclusives on in that interview. So I know everybody's going to tune in for that. I'm very excited about it. I know he's perhaps best known for his work in WWF as one of the Orient Express, but I'm a big Bad Company fan from their AWA run, and we're going to get into all of that good stuff.
The best thing about Orient Express to me was their music. Phil, one of our members, saying Pat is a great guy. The last 2 weeks, we have done members only podcasts for the members that help support this channel. We will do more in the future where we will answer members' questions more candidly than others. But I know, Jack, you wanted to talk about the Hall of Fame a bit today. The natural disasters going in before demolition. Although Earthquake, he had a good run, much better than Typhoons, I would say. I would say because of the bar, which let's call it. I mean, there's been some low people. It used to be called the Coco Beware Bar, but now like Bull Nakano is in there. And I'm not even going to bring up the Celebrity Wing as far as the bar. I mean, to me, Tugboat is not. If it was up to me, if the Coco Beware Bar didn't exist, Tugboat is not a Hall of Fame wrestler to me. That's just my opinion. Earthquake, yes, but to put them in before demolition, whatever. I don't agree with it. I don't think many people. I mean, they were solid for a couple of years there, but I couldn't even really tell you that. I know they feuded with Money Inc. a lot, but I don't really remember ever like really enjoying one of their matches, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I think it's I think it's part of the larger debate over the Hall of Fame. There's a lack of clear criterion that's chosen, the influence of politics, inclusion of some controversial figures. But then again, when we're talking about the natural disasters, it's those posthumous inductions that are kind of sad. Tenta, I know, wanted to be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's definitely with the candidates, or sorry, with the inductees that are there now. He's a viable candidate. I agree with you about the natural disasters. Good tag team. They had some good matches with the LOD, but again, it's sad that John Tenta never got the call beforehand. But I was going to actually, before we get into the list and yesterday's announcement, I know Vader, a friend of yours that you hung out with and did a really great shoot interview with him on the channel. He really wanted to be in the Hall of Fame, and he never got the call before he passed. What were your? I know you asked him about that. You could tell that really meant something to Leon.
It did, and he also didn't like Shawn Michaels. And when you brought that up to me, the story just automatically popped into my head. He asked me to redo the Shawn Michaels part of his interview because he had done more of a shoot thing on Shawn. And then he said, "Oh, wait a minute. Shawn has a lot to do with who's inducted into the Hall of Fame. Could you please not air what I just said? Let's do it again." Because I mean, he was actually supposed to get the title from Shawn for one point there, but Shawn did not like him. There's many reasons stated, but he really wanted to be in the Hall of Fame. At the time, like just before he died, he seemed depressed and sad. He had financial issues. He didn't want to die. He was divorced. I mean, it's really sad. He was still drinking, even though he said in the interview he hadn't drank for years. He did have something like 17 or 18 margaritas that night at dinner. So he was just not a happy guy. But he would be happy to know that they put him in, but it's too bad again that he didn't get that when he was still alive, because I think it would have boosted him and made him happy. Which, by the way, that was one of my favorite interviews I ever did with the man they call Vader.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites that you've done too on the channel. But looking at
And I still have his squatting. Here's how sad it is. He gave me his squat / deadlifting shoes because he knew he was going to die. He's like, well, I'm not going to be able to use these again, and my heart can't take going heavy. But I always think about them whenever I put them on, and they always motivate me to lift more.
Yeah, he was certainly, especially his WCW run. My God, that was the complete package, and those matches that he had with Sting, some of my favorite from that era of WCW that largely gets crapped on, but I really enjoyed the early to mid '90s.
Yeah, honestly, as a kid, 92, 93 WCW was better than 92, 93 WWE to me, to be perfectly honest with you. I'll take the Vader era of WCW over a Natural Disasters match in WWE. Hate to say it.
Yeah, no question. Before we go into the list, one last thing I wanted your insight on about the Hall of Fame in general, and just a programming note. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Great North Wrestling Podcast, I'll be having a guy named Carl Stern. He's a longtime podcaster, historian, writer, and has worked for Dave Meltzer for years. And we're going to talk about the controversy surrounding the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame, amongst others, which I think is a better system. But we're going to flush that out. That's tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern on this channel. But what do you think about the fact that this company has millions and millions and billions and whatever resources, and they don't have a physical Hall of Fame? It seems to me that would be a license to print money.
I don't think they think it'll make enough money to bother having a physical Hall of Fame. They're very, as you said, they're a billion-dollar company. They're very cheap. They're all about profits. I think it was in the news last week or the week before. Their actual office staff is frustrated right now, according to reports, because a lot of the UFC and WWE jobs have been consolidated. So a lot of them now have more work and are getting paid the same amount. To me, I just don't think they think enough people will go to the Hall of Fame to bother doing it. I have heard that Saudi Arabia might do it, since I mean that way they would have one, and they have all that money to throw around, and it might get them some tourists, as this whole sports connection that they're doing. As actually Meltzer said this today, why the boxing companies are going to be in trouble, and why Dana White's probably, for lack of a better word, coming himself right now, because he used to be a boxing fan. He now gets to be the Dana White of boxing, and with an unlimited amount of resources, because Saudi Arabia is not entering boxing to be like necessarily make money in boxing. They're doing it to whitewash the reputation of their company and make it more of their country, make it more tourist friendly. So they'll give him whatever he wants for this. So that's the same thing with what they're doing with WWE, who's going there 3 times next year, by the way. Another reason they keep saying they have more revenue than ever, that didn't exist in the 80s or Attitude Era, but I could see them doing a Hall of Fame there for sure. But I mean, going to the Hall of Fame in New York, the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame this year, they were telling me that there wasn't a lot of traffic overall, even though it's in a hockey arena. I know that the one in Iowa does decent, but doesn't get a huge amount of traffic. The New York one used to be in Amsterdam, New York, and Wichita Falls, Texas, and it went out of business in those 2 places. So I just don't think Hall of Fame, I mean, the WWE Hall of Fame might do better, obviously, but enough to really make enough of a profit to merit TKO to open a Hall of Fame, it doesn't seem like it.
Well, that's sad because I think it would make the WWE Hall of Fame a lot more meaningful. Consequently, it's like baseball Hall of Fame without Cooperstown. But to the list, and let's start with yesterday's announcement that was met with, I would say, universal positive reaction, and that's the total package. Lex Luger, who's I guess working with Diamond Dallas Page now and is making strides in his physical recovery. Always liked Luger, especially that deal where he had the tag match with Barry Windham. Speaking of heel turns, against Tully and Arn, and turned on Barry Windham, became a horseman, and all the stuff that he did in WCW. WWE, not so much, but definitely his WCW work, and also beating Hogan for the title in one of the last great moments of that company. What are your thoughts on Luger going in?
He deserves to go in with the career he's had. He had a great career, better career in WCW. He's one of the ones that was by far better in WCW. I don't think many would argue that. Booked better and performed better. To me, as I said in my report on it yesterday, what bothers me about him is I don't think he did enough to try and save Elizabeth when she had her overdose. And he definitely contributed to her downfall. And he ended up going to jail for all the drugs he had in his house. He claims he had no idea what she overdosed on in interviews. Yeah, right. I don't believe that. And you can hear in the 911 call, they're trying to. Yes, he didn't know CPR. Okay, I get it. You're a first aid guy too. You know, like me, that if you at least listen to the 911 operator's instructions, they can like talk you through at least ways to resuscitate someone. But it's clear in his call, he doesn't even try to resuscitate her. So to me, I don't like him personally for those reasons. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Yes, they got Sonny in there. Jimmy the Superfly Snuka is in there. Abdullah the Butcher,
Abdullah.
who wrestled and cut people knowing he had hepatitis and bled for years knowing he had hepatitis, which is
Yep.
just disgusting,
Yep.
and was proven in court of negligence for that. It was actually proven in both Canada and the US. So as far as like Pete Rose is in there. So as far as controversial characters, it doesn't matter. But definitely 100%, I would not give Luger a full pass on Elizabeth's death. Is he 100% responsible? No, but in my opinion, he could have done more, both from enabling her and also when she was actually dying. He could have done more to at least try and resuscitate her. But it sounds to me like he didn't do anything other than eventually call 911. But he should have done some of the stuff the operator told her to, in my opinion. But good for him going into the Hall of Fame. He's good friends with DDP. DDP has helped a lot of controversial characters, gave Scott Hall some more years on his life, although Hall, from what I understand, ended up relapsing in his more recent years. Saved Jake Roberts. It's questionable with Bagwell's recent jail stays whether or not he's telling the truth or not about being fully clean, but he's definitely doing better than he was. So he's helped a lot of people, not to mention all this. Butterbean. Butterbean lost a lot of weight, and I do his yoga, and it makes a difference with me physically. So I got nothing bad to say about that. But DDP does have pull in both companies, and now he's under contract again with WWE. So I'm sure he was in their ear about Luger.
Yeah, that brings up one of the facets of the Hall of Fame that you have to look at, and that is, in addition to that 911 deal where Elizabeth died, he was convicted of domestic violence against her prior to that.
Actually, I don't think he was convicted. He was
Okay.
charged and arrested, but she died. It never went to court. She died because, like,
Okay.
I don't know if that's the reason, but his story, which if you look up Hannibal's shoot interview with Lex Luger, his story on it that the marks were really from the dogs and the neighbors called the actual police on them, and he's got something for that. Again, to me, they dropped the charges, but his story, his telling of the story that it was the dogs and the neighbors didn't know what they were doing calling the police is a little weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it brings up the other question about whether personal conduct should impact the Hall of Fame, and as you mentioned, you've got some pretty uh, unsavory characters, I guess, with Abdullah headlining in that respect in the Hall of Fame already. So I think
Sunny's in there too. We can't
I,
forget her.
yes,
By the
yes,
way, she
absolutely.
lost her surprisingly, the lawsuit for the wrongful death was only 30,000 settled, which to me is low.
Yeah, absolutely. She definitely co-headlines that. But the other inductees so far, Triple H. You mentioned the natural disasters. Michelle McCool. So far, no demolition on the call yet. But Triple H is an
The
interesting
woman
one.
who has the Undertaker whipped.
Yes, yes. Well, I wouldn't say that she had a Wendy Richter esque career or Trish Stratus like career, but there you go. That's the influence of
Is
Hall.
Wendy Richter even in there? I don't
I
know
think
if she. Okay,
I
I
think
hope
she
I hope
is.
she is.
Yeah,
Good.
she should be. But Triple H is an interesting one because there's a lot of speculation, and take it for what it will. Again, Vince Russo talked about it that Triple H may be getting this and then being shown the door under the new. Well, I guess it's not new anymore, but the new TKO entity. What are your thoughts first of all on his career and that speculation?
Yes, and I'm no Mickey James fan. What about SCI? But I will say that apparently Undertaker got McCool to replace Mickey James on this show. I mean, whatever. He's got all the stroke in the world. But one thing I will say, and other people have been talking about this, he's pulled the curtain on the Undertaker in recent years. He had all this mystique about him. He's kind of showing he's whipped. Like whenever he shows his family life, it's clear she's in control of the household. She's hot. Good for him, but I don't know for his legacy. It's like this is a we all thought of him as the dead man and all this stuff, and like in the end, are we going to remember him as this or the guy that was whipped by his wife? Um, who knows? But people agree with me on that. And sorry, I got distracted by that comment. Could you say that again?
Oh, just in terms of your thoughts on his career, again, perhaps unfairly tainted by the politics deal, but his career and that speculation that's online that he's getting this as the gold watch, so to speak, and then will likely be shown the door by TKO.
While Vince Russo always pushes that about Triple H, he's been pushing it for years. I do think at some point he will be a scapegoat. I believe Triple H will be a scapegoat at some point. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Yes. He is the greatest politician of all time, undoubtedly, but he had a Hall of Fame worthy career. Again, for whatever reason, I liked him really well in WCW. I was one of the first to like notice his talent, but I'm not even really a fan. Like he was never one of my favorites in his DX or the game persona, which by the way, he played the game better than anybody. He married the boss's daughter, but I don't doubt he has a Hall of Fame worthy career. Do I believe he had no idea he was going to be inducted? No, he's in charge of the thing. So I'm not going to fall for that kayfabe, but enough people did. I guess it was worth doing. Hello, UFO Busters Australia. I just want to say something. Someone was asking about the Frank Dukes interview, which you actually did an interview with Frank Dukes.
on this
Who
channel with King of Connecticut.
Yes, and that was the guy that the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie
Bloodsport.
was Bloodsport was based off of. He was going to do another interview with me. He kept flaking out. He was alleging that his wife was having health problems. Could be true. I'm going to look back into it now that you bring it up. It's been a few months. Thanks for the reminder. But if you look up Frank Dukes, the Hannibal TV, you'll see Gentleman Jack's interview with him.
On the Old School Shooters podcast with the King of Connecticut. Yeah, real controversial guy. If you look into his background, been accused of a lot of things, makes a lot of claims, but that was an interview that I got extremely nervous doing for some reason, and we broke the tension by me calling him Frank Ducks. So that's a highlight there if you want to check that out.
And he did answer all of the main questions that people wanted to know about him in that interview, as far as his many controversies. But there's a lot more that I could dig deeper into. But he is a strange guy. There's no doubt about it. I thought that was an interesting interview, though, definitely. But no matter what you think about his accomplishments or not, he was the stunt guy for Bloodsport, so you got to give him that. And the movie was based on him, whether you want to believe all of his stories or not. So good for him.
And you know what? A very nice guy to interview. We had a good chuckle about that, and he doesn't have a star complex, so to speak, and he let me off the hook. But
he kayfabes. He still kayfabes too. Whatever. Again, he never breaks kayfabe on his stories. So you got to admire him for that.
Absolutely. Back to the Hall of Fame before we end the program this afternoon. Do you see anybody else getting the call? I know we keep circling back to Demolition. We did a full fan forum on Demolition versus the Road Warriors LOD, comparing their careers. Now that they've signed a Legends deal, do you see that finally happening?
It's possible. I believe it's definitely possible because they're probably still going to announce more. And they did sign. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen soon. Now that now that they're putting the natural disasters in, that's already one tag team. So to me, that was the first thing I thought. Or, what would be more fitting is to put Sid in since he just died. And one of the reasons they probably didn't put him in is because he had a big mouth. But now, obviously, they don't have to worry about that. And I guess he'd be more deserving than anyone on that list this year, other than Triple H, who you could argue is just as deserving as Sid. So who knows? I guess we're going to find out, but it seems like I would say there's a good possibility Demolition still might go in. And by the way, I'll put the link to the Frank Dukes interview up right now for anyone that wants to check it out. There it is right there. We got a fan from Australia watching. I'll give him a shout out. Andre the Giant. We're fighting in Sydney, Australia. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Back when there was a wrestling territory there. WWE's coming there, by the way, for 3 shows, I believe, this year.
It was actually quite a successful territory with Jim Barnett as the driving force behind there, and Gary Hart really being a central figure in that. Did you happen to get
one thing I miss is the old days, because now when you're blackballed like me, it's very hard. Whereas even Bruno Sammartino was blackballed in the past, but like there's so few places to wrestle that when you're blackballed, you're really blackballed. Whereas if it was the old days, I could go to Australia, make a name for myself there, enough that I'd be too much to refuse. In the US, you can prove yourself in other territories if you're blackballed from one. Now there's pretty much WWE and AEW, especially now that TNA is pretty much being taken over by WWE. NWA is practically non-existent. You could say the same about MLW. They both got a YouTube channel, which, by the way, this YouTube channel is doing better than both of theirs.
Combined.
So, which is not taking anything away. We're doing awesome. But yeah, it's just there's very few places to work. And from what I understand, those MLW contracts are extremely binding, and they've screwed over several wrestlers. It'll be interesting to see if Alex Hammerstone goes back there now that he's been released by TNA. And I wonder if I like the guy, but I wonder if one of the reasons he was released is because he posts a lot publicly about his supplementation, so to say. And I can't see, like, with a company affiliated with wanting WWE wanting to be associated with someone that, even though I don't know how much testing they do anymore, and definitely TRT is legal, but someone so open about that type of I guess you could call it, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but
It
extra
is.
supplementation.
Yeah, it is. TRT is not, of course, but yeah, I've seen some of the stuff that he openly discussed, and I mean, it's almost redundant because you look at the guy, and obviously he's not getting his shot at test every month. He's doing quite well with many other things, but
he would be great if they had ECW. I mean, that's where we really need it, and I would be great in an ECW type thing. There's no place for the misfits to go. So I hope something like that happens eventually. It might be too late for a guy like me, but there doesn't seem to be a true, like, alternative. And that's why I'll still keep my fingers crossed. Vince is going to start something, but a lot of people are saying that TKO might give Vince the something to do with the boxing thing in Saudi Arabia, just to help avoid him doing something in wrestling if he gets too itchy sitting at home doing nothing.
Yeah, I don't really understand that because he's worth billions and he's what, almost 80? You would think the time would come to just sit back and drink Mai Tais on the beach or whatnot.
You wanna run a wrestling company when you retire, so what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm 30 years younger than that.
But a guy like that, honestly, it's like my dad's 77, and every year he says he's going to retire. It's like, what are you going to do? I don't think Vince is ever going to be a whipped guy to any wife, but, like, what are you going to do? Become a full-time grandfather? I don't think so, and I also don't think Vince wants to depart the public eye with this, the last thing he's remembered for being the Janelle Grant stuff. I think he would die a happier man to accomplish something like the top boxing company, but even more. Everyone says, oh no, he could never start a third wrestling company. If I was Vince, honestly, that would light a fire under me and be like, what are you talking about? I can't do that. Because I personally think he could. Maybe it can't overtake WWE, but I think it could become more popular than AEW. And there might not be a lot of top free agents, but people's contracts expire all the time. And if you have a good enough ability to get people over, which, by the way, doesn't seem like AEW has, because they've created very few of their own stars, but Vince knows how to make stars. I mean, something could happen there, but that's something I'm just keeping my fingers crossed for as a wrestling reporter. And UFO Busters, I'd love to go to Australia sometime. I've never been, and I hear the women are beautiful there and the weather's beautiful.
Yeah, that's an interesting point though about Vince. With the Triple H deal. Everybody was euphoric when he finally got the reins, so to speak, and now there appear to be cracks in that, and criticism, and people actually making that point that you did, that say what you want about McMahon, but he got people over, and they're kind of pining, I guess is the word, for those good old days.
And the other thing I'll just say about the fan-friendly Triple H, the fan-friendly Triple H that has jacked tickets up more expensive than they've ever been in history, to the price that the layman person can't even go anymore. And someone actually recently posted a good comment on another one of my videos about the Vince possible takeover. Shane McMahon, that'd be a great, like, oh, he's too old. Well, that would be something Shane could take over. And there's real heat with Shane and Stephanie and Triple H and Shane. I mean, that could be interesting. Shane and Vince. Shane wanted to prove himself. Oh, well, you guys technically got the WWE job that I wanted, but I'm going to show you guys that I could actually do something special. And it would give something to keep the McMahon legacy alive 100%. But yes, for the fan-friendly Triple H, jacking ticket prices up. And you guys can say what you want. I tried to watch the first Raw on Netflix, and I had a really hard time. I don't think he's the greatest booker ever. He was an alternative to Vince at a time people were really sick of Vince's booking. Vince definitely booked some terrible things. But the more alternatives out there, the better. I mean, Triple H, I'll give it to him. He's better than Tony Khan, and he's the best for what's out there today in an active major company. I'll give him that. But do I think he's better than the Attitude Era? No, or the era of when Hulk Hogan was on top? No.
Well, that criticism of Vince that he lost it or whatever. Name a booker that if you look at the territories and a guy that had some great success booking. I know you have an opinion of him, but Gary Hart talked about the fact that you should only have the book so long, and then things can get stale. That was one of the criticisms of Dusty
Triple
Rhodes.
H 4 matches a show, by the way. That's a very
Yeah.
good point. He's the guy that's changed pay-per-views to format. You got 39,000 or 36, whatever you want to believe, and he's going to give you guys 4 matches.
Yeah. But having the success that he did for as long as he did with his creative vision. I know he had help from say Patterson and others, but give the guy a break. He produced solid gold from 84 to, I don't know, 2005. That's a pretty good run.
Yes, he's definitely talented, and I'd like to see him back in there at some point. And I mean, Bob Cook, who's watching, wrestled various times during WWE's era when Vince was running things, and during my favorite era, one of my favorite eras of WCW. But this has been fun chatting with you. Thanks to the fans for giving us your opinions. We do members only as well. If you want to subscribe as a member and help support the channel. And The Hannibal TV is on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. There's going to be another fan interactive interview with Don Morocco coming up soon. Marty Jannetty is going to be back on here again. I'm working on a lot of interviews this month as well, and for the coming months. So make sure to subscribe.
Absolutely. This channel, the Hannibal TV, is only getting bigger and better, and that's why not only subscribe but like these videos as I know you will like them, and hit the notification button so you don't miss any of the great content we have.
And in one way or another, there is going to be some type of event produced by us this year. Definitely. We're not going to say where yet, but there will be at least one event produced by us this year that will involve a lot of women's matches, because the women's matches on this channel are very popular. And of course, I'll probably wrestle on it myself as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Hannibal. Getting a lot of questions about when Great North Wrestling is going to be producing an event. No worries. We're looking at some different business models. Again, we want to continue to bring really quality live events to the fans that deserve it. And we're looking at a lot of options, but stay tuned to the Hannibal TV for that. And don't forget,
one last thing, Shoot from Vision Quest. Live interview with me this coming Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. One of my favorite movies.
Absolutely. I concur with that. That's a great film. But don't forget, May the 3rd in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, one and done. Hannibal is going to ground the career of Super Crazy. I'll be there managing him, and we're going to show those American fans what true patriots, true Canadian patriots do in that ring, and that's only the start of many good things to come. So fans, thanks for watching the Hannibal TV this week. Appreciate all your viewership and support.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos,